like to call the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners July 14th meeting to order. Dawn, if you would call the roll, please.
Mr. Frank Denton, Mr. James Ainsworth,
Present.
Mr. Ben Friedman, Mr. Milton Gutierrez, Mr. Robert Jalnos.
Here.
Mr. William Clark,
Present.
Mr. Justin McDonald,
I'm here.
Mr. Mark Savasta, and Mr. David Yelovich.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you, board members. Believe it or not, we are in 100% attendance. All 9 board members are here, and I'm so thankful of that, because that way I won't have to lock the doors and issue a subpoena to have you arrested for not showing up for our meeting to break the quorum. So, a joke, obviously. But we are thrilled to death to be here, and we're thrilled to death to be in person. We've got some attendees here in the audience, and we welcome you, and we're glad that you came to join us today. Before I begin my remarks, I want to offer a special welcome to a board member, Milton Gutierrez, who has been deployed for the last, I don't know how many months, but for some time. First time that I've met Milton in person. He's back now, safe and sound. And Milton, I want to offer you a special thanks and welcome home, and thank you for your service to the United States. Thank you very much. And I think that you had a remark that you wanted to make at this time.
So I
was deployed for 8 months. I was in 2 countries. I was in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait as a chaplain serving the Texas National Guard 36 ID Infantry Division there. And one of the things that we have the privilege of doing is dedicating a flag and being flown on a either a helicopter on a Black Hawk or an aircraft, and being flown during one of their missions across the theater. And so that's one of the things that I did. So I want to present a flag that was flown in Saudi Arabia with a certificate signed by the crew of the Black Hawk. And it says this flag was proudly flown in a UH-60 Mike Black Hawk helicopter over the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on the 26th day of January 2021 in support of Operation Spartan Shield. May it serve as a reminder of America's commitment to defend liberty and freedom while honoring those who have died for it. Dedicated to the board members and staff of the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners. So I'd like to present this to the board and to the staff here.
Thank you, Milton, so much. We appreciate it. And welcome home. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
In beginning my remarks, and I'm going to try to make them brief because we've got a full agenda today and plenty to do. The title of my remarks are a legislative summary for the 87th legislature. It's an understatement for me to say, and it's old news. We've passed the bill. The governor has signed it, and we're in business. And if you go back to January, at our January meeting, that was our objective, is to remain a standalone agency. And as a benefit, we picked up some statutory authority and guidance that are going to be a tremendous help to us. For those of you who might not be a part of the legislative process or regularly go through legislative proceedings, 6,927 bills were filed in the 87th legislature. Only 1,073 passed, and 21 of those 1,073 were vetoed by the governor. So I'm going to tell you, when you look at where this agency started in December and January of this year, which was the only thing we had out there was a bill abolishing our agency and transferring it to another agency. We came a long way. And I am happy to report that we not only passed our bill, we passed it 1 week prior to the legislature adjourning. And that is a big deal because that last week is crunch time. You might or might not make it through because of all the demands of the legislature. So I'm going to have to tell you, it was a very comforting feeling for me to be sitting in the locker room watching it on TV while everybody else was struggling to get across the finish line and we were already there. Our success in this session was due to a lot of things, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. It goes back a couple of years ago. I think they call themselves 71K. That's when all the plumbers converged upon the Capitol, and I'm going to tell you that that's where it started. You got the legislators' attention. They knew this industry was united and they were passionate about their feelings, and therefore they were receptive to our persuasion to allow us to continue as a state agency. So that's where it started. We got a lot of help along the way. Even Mother Nature gave us a little bit of a boost in February. As tragic as it was, the freeze showcased the importance of the job that you do as an industry for the citizens of Texas. So that further focused the legislature on plumbing issues. The governor has, I think, has put together an outstanding board that I talked regularly and reoccurringly to about every legislator that I could get to listen to me about the quality of the board we have and the diversity in the industry. And they listened. I was here every week since January, 1 or 2 days a week, with working with Lisa and the staff and talking with legislators and attending hearings. And we were very well received. The other thing I want to give credit to, and that's to the industry. The reason we were successful, and anyone that's involved in the legislative process knows this, there are 101 ways to kill a piece of legislation. Then there's only one way to pass it. And because our industry as a whole was united on this issue and we were focused on a issue, that's why we were successful. I have no doubt different segments of the industry wanted certain things, and I not only want to compliment the industry for their support, but I also want to compliment them on the restraint of not putting themselves ahead of the industry and staying focused on the agency and our future. Had that not have happened, I think we would have had a very difficult time pushing it across the finish line. There was no controversy within our industry. We're united in what our objectives were. And the one thing I want to give people some advice, fatherly advice that you didn't ask for. And I learned something this legislative session. Relationships mean something. And be careful, careful, careful throughout your life is don't burn bridges behind you. I ran into people during the legislative session that I never dreamed that I would ever have any contact with again. First and foremost was the guy that was carrying the piece of legislation that would have abolished the bill and sent us to another agency. And that's Senator Robert Nichols. Most people don't realize and didn't know this, but 15 years ago, I ran against Robert Nichols for that Senate seat. And Robert beat me. But Robert and I developed a very close friendship and relationship and respect for each other during that campaign. It was not the environment that we live in today. We had respect for each other. We were civil with each other. We didn't do anything, take any personal attacks. And that relationship paid off this time because he was my first stop in January. And to get him to reverse his position of abolishing our board and give us a chance to do what needed to be done as an standalone agency. And Robert and I have spent hours together on the phone and in person and working with his staff. And we owe a more debt of gratitude than you will ever know to Senator Robert Nichols and his staff. As I told you, it'd be easy to kill a bill. And had he have not changed his position, I have no doubt that he had stood a pretty good chance of not allowing this bill to pass. So not only did he do that, when we went through this session, we got the piece of legislation that was filed by Symphonia Thompson, who has been a big support. She's from Houston. The labor unions in Houston have supported her for years. And that relationship they had paid off because she was certainly a champion for us. Senator Whitmire, also from Houston, was a big supporter, and he carried it in the Senate. But it's the industry's relationship with these legislators is the key to it. We not only got our bill passed, and maybe Richard will allude to this during the finance report, but we got 100% of everything we asked in our legislative appropriation request, bar none. We got the legislation, and we got the funding that we requested to the penny, including some $209,000 of additional items called exceptional items. I'm not sure that's happened to too many agencies, and certainly I don't know that it's happened in this agency. And the guy that I want to give credit to is Senator Robert Nichols. We didn't have that funding in place at the time the sessions both closed and the bill passed. We got that because he was our champion in the conference committee, which put the final touches on the Senate, on the finance portion of it. And Robert was our champion there, and he really delivered and came through for us. And I would encourage the industry to, if you have the opportunity or take the opportunity, to drop him a note and thank Senator Nichols, thank Representative Thompson, thank Senator Whitmire. Senator Schaefer offered an amendment that's really going to be helpful to us going forward. So if you get the opportunity, I would sure hope that the industry would, we are quick to criticize people that don't do things that we want in the legislature. But when those that support us in our cause do something good, let's not forget to drop them a note and thank them for their support of our industry. So we'll have other things come up during the meeting that are relating to the bill to pass in the 87th legislature, but it was an excellent session for us. We had people show up and testified on our behalf, and that's huge. It is just huge. So it was not an individual effort by any individual. It was collaboratively, we came together for a common cause. And it goes to show you that if we can get on the same agenda as an industry and as an agency, we can make great strides in the plumbing industry. I had a legislator, everyone was talking union plumbers and non-union plumbers. And I told a legislator several times, there's no such thing as a union plumber or a non-union plumber to me or to our board. To us, they're all plumbers. It's just different avenues that people select individually to practice the trade. And everyone is going to get treated the same, and everyone's going to get treated fairly. We're not targeting anyone. We're just trying to protect the consumer and have reasonable, unambiguous standards that the industry can follow going forward. And we don't distinguish between one or the other. And I think that's the consensus of our board. So I won't say any more other than to say that the industry as a whole did a really, really fine job. We wouldn't still be sitting here and still meeting were it not for the efforts of a lot of people. And I want to thank you all for what you did. It's so to let you know how we're going to do the agenda, I would like to, if possible, let's cover, it's 10:15. Let's try to cover our staff reports by noon, 12 or 12:30. Take a 45-minute break for lunch. I've ordered lunch in for the board members here. And then in the afternoon, we'll take up those rule changes and discussion items that are on the agenda. So they may be out of order, but if that's agreeable with the board, let's try to get our staff reports done. And I should say something, you know, I'd said we kind of agreed a couple of meetings ago that we were not going to do staff reports every board meeting. We were going to alternate it. And I wanted to do that. And Lisa's the one that made me do staff reports. So I'm for them. I mean, I want to do a staff report every time, but for the benefit of the staff, we tried to give them a break. But Lisa said there were some important things that we needed to get done. And certainly I welcome them. I'm thrilled to death to do them. So, but staff don't get mad at me. She's the one that said we're going to do staff reports. So, okay. So with that being said, Lisa, why don't you go ahead and take over your portion of it? And as always, board members, as we go through these reports, if you have questions, get our attention and let's stop and ask questions, because this is the time that we can talk in open forum and get all of our questions answered. And there's no such thing as a question that's not, it's irrelevant. If it's important to you, it's important to us. So Lisa, take it away.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Denton, Chair Denton. I just wanted to, I was going to touch on a couple of items very quickly in regards to House Bill 636. And at some point in a moment, I'd like for Helen to jump in and maybe go over a few little items, if that's okay. And yes, I do have some reporting items to give you, and I'll try to do them quickly. I went ahead and had staff prepare everything because in the event I get a question on something, then I'll have the answer. And if I don't have it here, we'll certainly get it for you. But in regards to House Bill 636, there are things that have occurred that are going to give us the statutory authority to continue on some items that we've wanted to do for a very long time. Some of those have to do with the examination. The other big item, of course, has to do with fingerprinting, which we implemented for tradesmen back in December, let's call it January 20th of 20. And we recently, at the last meeting, prepared to move forward with the journeyman fingerprinting, which people will hear more about that as we move forward. And we set deadlines for the different levels and different times to get those items done. We also did several rule changes over the last year and a half, in particular in June of 2019. And so we're somewhat ahead of the game on a few items, which is prioritizing complaints. The House bill clarifies some of those items and how we're going to do that. And we have a really good rule and a guide for that. So we've got 7 weeks into House Bill 636, and we've been very, very busy. And we had started out on a few of those items, and so now we're going to move forward into the items that we need to work on, and hopefully everyone will get some good benefit out of these items. There's a multitude of things within the House Bill 636, and I'm going to let Helen go over a few of those items. One of the other things I do want to bring up, though, and I think most people are aware of it, the requirement for the Responsible Master Plumber course was removed, the 24-hour course to become a Responsible Master Plumber. That was removed. In addition, that is something that we were waiving during COVID and the winter storm. So 636 removed it, and certainly there's a lot of people that course is still out there. We'll continue to recommend that if someone wants to take that course, they're fully welcome to take it. There's a lot of good information out there, but it is no longer required, and has nothing to do with the exemptions that we provided earlier in the year. It was removed by virtue of 636. We also now have some authority to contract to do our third-party examinations, and we're steadily working on that. And some of the items in 636 relate directly to sunset items such as the disciplinary history online. Those items are listed underneath the disciplinary history is underneath each of the plumbers. When you look them up, you can see their disciplinary history, and those have been on there. In addition, and we'll talk more about it later, we've got some other items that we're going to make available to the public. So, and of course, one of our big items is that we're working to make a tremendous amount of changes in continuing education. And we're going to talk more about that when we get to the rules. And there's a lot of excitement about that for good reason. Staff's excited about it. I think the plumbers will be excited about it. And we've got board members that are excited about it, and everybody's pitched in and done a lot of help to work towards that. So with that said, I'm not going to go on that anymore, but I also want to make mention that in regards to, let me make sure I don't miss anything. I want to talk about staff just a little bit very quickly. I have an announcement that I want to make. Our chief examiner, Robert Neil Fraley, will be retiring at the end of this month, and we certainly wish him well. And we're going to miss him. But I know he's got a long list of things that he's just been itching to go get done. So we'll give him a hand. And if you get a chance, if you know Neil, give him a ring. We're going to keep him really busy in the next 2 weeks, though. He's not going to get off light. It's not a work your way out kind of situation. So anyway, Neil, I know you're listening. We're going to miss you. And he's done a wonderful job of jumping in and taking care of a lot of different items. In addition, we've got quite a few job postings that you'll be seeing out on our website and Workforce Commission in particular. We are so lucky. Excuse me, I guess I have a frog today. We are so lucky that they saw fit to give us additional help to implement fingerprints. And so you'll see some postings for customer service individuals and some legal assistance, that sort of thing, posted on our website. All told, we're going to have 4 more people, and that's like, it might as well be 40 people. 4 sounds so doggone good. But so we're very, very excited about that. In addition, we also have a new examiner that we recently hired, Elliot Jones. And we have an additional field investigator that we've put on in the El Paso area. And so we're really excited. We have another field investigator position that's open in the Houston area. So the paychecks are good. So if anybody that wants to apply. Let's take a look, see what you got, see if you're interested in it. We're excited. Staff continues to welcome people to the front office, and even though we never really stopped and we never closed our doors out front, people have been coming in. We still get a lot of walk-ins. We welcome them, and we stay very, very busy. So our doors are open, and it's really nice this particular go around. Even though we don't have a whole lot of public here, it's nice. I have a full board. Y'all can't even, I know you can imagine, but for me, and staff, it is a really big deal that we have a full board here, and all the help that y'all have been throughout the session. So it's exciting. There's a lot more things to come. I also want to make one note on testing. I want to talk about testing just a little bit. You'll see that there is a list. I went ahead and put it in there. That's the retake list and the folks that are scheduled currently right now. It's part of your board packet. I won't go through every single number on there, but I want to mention something. we have a, for lack of a better term, a roundup in Waco. And we're going to do examinations for masters and examinations for individuals that are going from a tradesman to a journeyman. And those are going to be this Friday and Saturday. We sent out an email blast about it to individuals that are eligible. But I'm going to say this publicly for anybody that's listening. It's not for everybody, and it's not for someone that doesn't have their application in here, but we've even gone through the applications that came in within, a week ago. We don't see the applications right when they come in until money's processed. But if you know of someone that might be interested, I'm going to give you Kevin's telephone number, not mine. And Kevin?
Yeah.
What's the online number? That's the one I want folks to call, which is the 512 774 7578. That's our online cell number, and that's going to go to Kevin. And just to streamline it, if someone is interested in taking us up on a Friday or Saturday, this Friday, this Saturday in Waco, written examination for a master or a tradesman going to journeyman, call Kevin. And we'll take a look at what you have here. You've got to have application in here for us to be able to make it work for you. But I'm just going to open that out and we'll see what we get.
Lisa, let me jump in here a second. Could I?
You bet.
I want you to know how this came about. And Lisa and I, as we always do when I'm over here, are looking at different ways to try to reduce the backlog and the number of people that we've got waiting to take the examination in order to try to get more plumbers on the street. And Lisa brought this up during our may have been 6 or 7 o'clock at night. We're in there talking, but sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. We've got probably 400 or 500 folks that are in line to take the exam. Some of them are new applicants, either taking the tradesman or new entries taking the journeyman license, which requires a practical examination, which at this time we only offer it here. But there are 200 or 300 folks that all they have to do is take the written test. If they're moving from tradesman to journeyman or from journeyman to master, it's a matter of taking a multiple choice test. So Lisa and I were talking and she said, well, we could rent a spot down here at such and such a place and maybe get a bigger group. And through our discussion, we got talking about TSTC is in Waco, just, a couple hours away. We picked up the phone. They offered us whatever facility they had to accommodate as many people. If we had to, we could test 100 people at a time, because it's just a matter of handing out the test, monitoring the test, and taking them back up. So this is a great idea that came up through the discussion with Lisa. And it's something I'm a little disappointed in the numbers. We sent out 200 and something invitations to take this written exam and had a limited response of a dozen or 2 dozen. I anticipated and hoped that we'd have 100 people taking these tests and we could knock these numbers of backlogs down in terms of 50 and 100 rather than 5 or 10 or 15 that we're doing here in the Austin office. So I'm calling on all of you who are providers, who are providing the training programs or continuing education, and you know of someone who is taking the required training to become a journeyman or a master, and they're in line for testing. They've already paid, so they don't have to pay extra. All they have to do is call that number that Lisa had provided, and we'll get you in to be tested either Friday or Saturday of this week. So call us today or call us tomorrow. And I would encourage the educational providers If you know of folks that have been through your class and are waiting on a test and they want to go to work as a journeyman or a master and all they need is the written test, we're going to get you out of here. I can't tell you why we didn't get a greater response than we did. All I hear is complaining about having to wait. Well, now we're offering to do it this week if you want to. And we didn't get that big a response. But it is a great idea. And it's not one we're going to give up on. We're going to do it again, and we're going to do it again. As long as we have people in line to take the written test only, we don't have to do them 10 at a time. We can do them 100 at a time. And until we get the computer-based testing in place, it's the mechanism we're going to use to try to eliminate these number of people that are waiting. Right now, we're booking them into September. And all they got to do is take a 100 question multiple choice test. There's no sense in that. I mean, if it's a matter of just showing up and taking it. So this is our first one, but I can tell you it's not going to be our last one. And I can't explain why more people didn't take us up on it. Maybe they thought they had to pay again or something like that, or it's a different test. But it is the exact test that you went through the training program to take. You've already paid for it if you're signed up, so there's no additional cost. And it makes no sense to me for you to wait if you're ready to take it. Let's take it and go to work as a master or a journeyman. So continuing education providers and trainers who are offering the training program, help us fill these classes up. We've got 2 coming up this week, and we will schedule another one at some future date when Lisa puts that date together, and we'll do it again. And the next one, I hope that we have 100 people taking the test instead of a couple of dozen. So it's a great mechanism. Lisa, it was a great idea. And thank you, TSTC, as always. They offered their facility free of charge to us. They've set up their gymnasium. They're going to move in tables and chairs, and we virtually don't have a capacity there. I mean, they're willing to do whatever it takes to provide the space. So when I say that, obviously there are some limits, but certainly I think we could accommodate 75 to 100 at a time. Think about it. If we could do 100 3 times, that eliminates 3/4 of the backlog that's waiting to take the test. So while we're waiting for this computer-based testing to come to fruition, this is a great stopgap measure and an opportunity for those plumbers who've been complaining, well, gosh, I can't take the test till August or September. Well, give us a call and you can take it this week if you want to. So quit your bitching if you don't. Excuse my language, but
Will that be bleeped on the delay?
I don't think so. I don't think we have the bleeping capabilities, but
Thank you, Frank, for taking the words out of my mouth.
well,
You didn't. That was good.
it's the problem that we've been hearing about the most. I didn't have one legislator, or I haven't had one plumber tell me that you're too dang fast. You pushed me into the test too quick, or we don't have enough plumbers. Nobody's been complaining about that. They've been saying we need plumbers, and we're making them wait. Well, like I said, that excuse just got eliminated because there is no reason for you to wait. We've set up a system where you can take that written test and take it quickly. And we're going to do it continuously as long as we can fill up spots. And it's going to work. It's a good idea. It doesn't change those that are moving from apprentice to tradesman or tradesman to journeyman if they've not taken the practical exam. Those will still have to be funneled through here for the time being until we get our testing center built in Waco. I'm going to throw out something, and I was going to talk about it later when we could talk about more plumbers. I got a call yesterday from one of the Board of Regents for TSTC, and they yesterday approved $1.3 million of their budget to build out us a testing center at their campus in Waco. Now, I'm going to tell you, that's a commitment. That is a commitment. And all of this came about in the last 3 months based upon a conversation. I saw Mike Reeser, the chancellor, testifying before the Senate Finance Committee, and he was getting drilled pretty bad about the plumbers. And he said, well, in years past, we've had a difficult time in getting what we needed in cooperation out of the plumbing board. And I said, that's bull. So I picked up the phone and got an audience with him. And after about an hour-long conversation, it was so apparent that his objectives and what he wants to accomplish for his institution is directly aligned with what we're trying to accomplish, and that's get more plumbers going and in the field. So based upon that only an hour-long conversation 2 months ago, yesterday, they approved a $1.3 million expenditure for our exclusive use for us to test our students. And that's going to be a huge, huge new era for this agency. We are going to eliminate the wait time one way or another. And I couldn't be thankful enough. And I talk about Mike Reeser, but his entire staff have just been bent over backwards in cooperating with us. And I'll talk more when we get to the appropriate place on the agenda when we're talking about adding more plumbers. But I had to throw that in. It's just, I'm so impressed that they move so quickly, and based upon just their comfortable feeling with our agency and our board, they're willing to make an expenditure of that size. That's half our budget. And they're going to spend it on us for a testing center at their facility. So Lisa, a lot of talk, but the bottom line, the purpose, all you need is take a written test for journeyman or master. If you will let us know, there is no wait time. Just let us know and we'll get you in the program. So help us, providers, educational providers, help us fill up those seats and get more plumbers out there. Go ahead, Lisa.
And I want to add, though, this is for people that have an application in here. And I want to say, if you're planning on coming, make sure you bring a photo ID. We need to know that it's really you. And we're going to be very strict on that. So we're excited about it. We wanted to try this during COVID, but the facility we wanted to use was not open. But the way this is set up, we're going to use their gymnasium. It's actually going to be better. It's easy to get to. There's better parking for the big trucks. And so we're real excited about it. And we'll see how this will go. We'll learn from it, and then we'll do one, and it'll be bigger and better. Each time we do these things, they get a little bit better. So anyway, and I wanted to make mention too that I also put the report up along with the scheduled folks that are on that report. It's kind of a breakdown and an analysis. And I have some concerns because the number of people that have taken the exam 2 or more times went up a little bit. So we've got 190 people out of 782, 782 that are 2 or more times retakes. So we need to do some studying. The more you study and the more people that pass it the first time, the quicker we can get individuals back in. The overall pass rate, we're still right around 70.6%. So it hadn't budged too much. And it tells me we need to do just a little bit of work. And in addition to the tradesman to journeyman and the masters, I also sent out, I think I have 2 to 3 that are water supply protection specialist exams. And we had some odds and ends people that were returning that got notice of that exam. So if you're maybe you're in a similar situation and you need just one part that's written, call Kevin and we'll take a look. We can't get you this time, we can get you in the next time. We've continued to do the written exams in several locations around the state. That remains a success. And the people that were scheduled in July, we had quite a few scheduled July, first part of July in Dallas, Fort Worth. That seems to be a real hot spot right now. So, and we may try a large chunk of people in more than one place. We'll see kind of how this all works out. Just to make note on the master plumbers, we currently have 11,903. We've got 22,289 journeymen, and we're up to 3,033 tradesmen. So our tradesmen came up a little. That's a good thing. And we're at an all-time high for responsible master plumbers, 8,037. That's the most plumbing companies that we have ever had since I've been here. And I've watched the number of plumbing companies over the years from whenever I was in enforcement positions. So, and I dare say Winter Storm had a lot to do with that. And I want to make note, boy, we had some tremendous response on Winter Storm. We had people that wanted to jump in and start a business, got their insurance quickly, that they were planning on probably putting together some kind of repair company. This pushed them forward to do so. So they're part of that 8,000. We had a special person that was setting up the RMPs, and without the requirement of the class, we were able to enter them a little bit more quickly. So we got those people up and running. The industry as a whole did really good. And, but the one thing that I want to say is as of July 11th, the exemptions for Winter Storm have expired. And we updated the website to say so. So your apprentices that need to go ahead and get examined, they're no longer exempt. So let's get everybody back in, get them back on course to be examined. The RUIs, the drain cleaners, those folks that we put out for extra help, some of those could be moved forward now into tradesmen. We're ready to do that. I'm going to bet people accumulated a bunch of hours during Winter Storm. So let's get them documented. Let's get them in here. Let's see if we can get them licensed.
Lisa, I want to say something here, and you and I have talked privately about this, and I want to get the board's reaction to this. You know, for the last 2 or 3 meetings, we have been warning these folks that got these exemptions or deferrals for taking continuing education. We've given them a date, we've extended that date, and now that date has gotten here. And I've told Lisa that my feeling is this: that's the last time. If we come up at the end of the month, when they come up for renewal, they're not going to get renewed. I feel, and I'm open to comments from the board, but we've given 3 warnings to bring it up to date, and they hadn't done it yet. So don't be surprised when you ask for your license to be renewed and you get denied because you've not completed your continuing education. Or do you have any different feelings than that? It's not like this slipped up on them. Okay. Lisa, you heard it. Or
There's about 2,000, a little over 2,000, 2023 that made the promise to fulfill the requirement for the COVID exemption, which was the extension Mr. Denton just mentioned. And I said at the last board meeting, you know, we'd been running these lists, looking at them, and that July 31st, that's it. And we sent it out to the providers. We've looked at lists. We've contacted people. Kevin sent email blasts. Kevin does all that communication now, and that's kind of evolved into a really good thing. People like to get those notices, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do it. But we're getting to the point that the next list that we run, we're gonna start pulling some of those exemptions down. And I made the written request and responded back to the governor's office that, you know, we pretty much fulfilled all the things of trying to help people during COVID, during winter storm. And so now we've got to move forward. So I know there's a lot of people that have hours. I know there's a lot of people that need some continuing ed. You can tell, you can look yourself up on the website and see if you have something that says TSBPE, that says disaster relief. That disaster relief is what you promised to take at a later date. So that later date's here. It's been here several times. Yeah. So we need to get those done. It's a lot of work, what staff did to make all that happen. And we need to, it's going to be a lot of work if we have to undo some of it. So if you'll just get the requirement met, we can be over and done with.
Lisa, let me ask a question of you. You mentioned about the governor's order, which allowed us to offer these exemptions. That's going away. Is that correct? Is that my understanding is? And I also should correct myself. When we open the meeting, we are doing this. 8 of our board members are here, but we got 1 virtually. And as I understand it, when those orders that were lifted, they were issued back in March, allowing us to do virtual board meetings. Though that will go away also. Is that correct, Lisa?
Yes, sir. This will be our last hybrid virtual meeting, so to speak, too. Next meeting will be fully open. I mean, we're open right now. Anyone that wants to can certainly walk through the doors, but that goes away. July 11th was the last day of the winter storm.
We will continue as we've done in years past to stream all our board meetings for the public to participate. And we were speaking yesterday about some way that they might be able to email in their comments rather than being here in person. We'll figure that out, how they can do that if they choose not to come. But as Lisa said, it's open. We've got some guests here with us today that we're thrilled to death to have. And but for board members, we're going to have to start trying to put it on our schedule to be sure to be here in person, because this opportunity of virtual meetings is fixing to slip away from us. I regret it. I kind of liked it, but it is what it is, and we'll just make it work. So
yeah, everything has a beginning, everything has an end. So that's kind of where we're at right now. The other item I wanted to mention is the enforcement department continues to be very, very busy. The reports that I would normally do, or that Steve would normally, actually, these are the 2 that I already do, which are the summary of complaints that we've investigated, the cases that we've looked at. I included those in your package, and I'll go ahead and forward them out to the CPE providers because they use those in their continuing education classes. So the reports that we put out for you previously, you'll still get those. And I included them for the board. And I'm happy to answer any questions about pass, fail, pending exams, what we're doing, ideas anyone has of me right now.
Yeah,
you had mentioned the pass or the fail rate our pass rate is at 70%. I don't find that to be unreasonable. I would say that if it were I'd be more concerned if it were at 98%, or if it be at 10% or 15%. But as someone once told me, who was the director of education at TDLR, I was complaining about the pass rate, and he said, "Mr. Chairman, it is what it is." I said, "I can't, you put the standards in the test." I'm not suggesting this today, and it has to do with tests. And you mentioned about the the retakes, the people that are retesting, it's going through my mind. These folks have gone to a training class to become journeyman or to become masters. Do we keep any type of statistics of which of these training classes are the most effective? The pass rate is the greatest or the least? Don't read between the lines. I'm not asking anything. But I'm asking Lisa, do we have the statistical data to show which students have the highest pass rate and which have the lowest?
We don't have a statistic because we don't keep statistics on who takes a prep class from who. It's not they're not required to take the prep class. Now, we have considered adding a field to be able to track that. However, I know a lot of the providers track that data themselves. And so it might be interesting to have the provider send in what their, what their statistics are, if they have them available.
Or maybe not send them to us. I don't know. I'm just trying to say,
We can certainly start doing that.
Well, I'm not suggesting that. But I'm just telling you, if I were a trainer and students who went through my training class passed at a 95% rate, I'd be putting it on billboards on the interstate highways. So there's an opportunity there for those trainers who obviously do an effective job and have got a high percentage of pass rates among the students that come through them. I think you're missing an opportunity if you don't blow your own horn.
Hey,
So maybe I should leave it there. Mr. Freeman?
I would love to see that info too. It could be bad or good for that info to come through from the providers, but my personal opinion is that a lot of the retakes are with individuals that don't go through any sort of training, and they want to rush in, get on the list, and then take the test and see what happens. I think a lot of masters are telling their folks, you've got the hours, let's go take the test, and if you fail a portion of it, we'll just send you back. And that's the unfortunate thing is, trying to get people in the field as fast as possible without them being prepared for the test is really what that number is all about.
Well, I'm not suggesting anything at this point other than it's on my radar.
I was just going to add, kind of as a consumer, if I get online one night and say, well, where should I go to get some education? I think as a consumer, it might be nice to have numbers like that. If I got it down to 2 providers that I'm looking at, and this one seems to pass more people, they go in more prepared, let's say, it helps as a consumer make a decision. And I think that's part of the importance of these numbers, that because right now if we don't have numbers, we're flying blind. And if we just go with the providers, I'd be interested to see, if they keep going back and going, technically you could say, yes, all of our students pass. They may have gone 10 times to do it, but they could say all of our students pass. Maybe it's a number, they pass on the first exam or something like that. But I think it's worth looking into for both our edification and also for a consumer, making a better choice.
I agree with everything that's said, and I'll just put it this way. If I were about to take a master test or I were about to take a journeyman test, that would, as a consumer, that's the question I would ask the trainer before I took the course. What percentage of your students are successful on the first try?
It's a great selling point for them.
It absolutely is.
Great data for us.
So rather than us stepping into monitoring at this particular point, I would love to see these trainers do that on their own, advertise that, and solicit business based upon your success rate. And we will cooperate with them to try to let them know how successful they are. But I'm not into us, or my personal, I don't want to jump into this and create another issue for us to start monitoring and checking. But I believe that those trainers are missing a great opportunity. If 95% of your folks pass the first time, like I say, I'd be buying me a billboard on Interstate 35 out there. So
I
anyway,
definitely don't want to get into the big brother scenario where, you know, we have that control over providers. I think it'd be great to see the info generically so that we can, you know, keep up with it and be able to provide that back to the ultimate consumer, which is the homeowner, about, you know, that sort of information if it's available.
Yeah, you know, after the format, we may be getting off agenda, but we're really not getting off agenda because it directly relates to.
It's not off agenda because it directly relates to Lisa's report on the pass fail rate and the number of retakes. So that's why it's germane to our discussion. But I think we've said enough.
Yeah.
I think everyone understands, and I think people got the message. So Lisa?
Sir, and I want to add just one, I see it on a daily basis. When we have an individual, and this relates to the pass fail, when we have an individual that has failed once, twice, the examiners are looking to see who they took their training from. And if there's a problem in a particular group, they know it and they reach out to that person or the person that's been doing the training and say, hey, we had 4 or 5 people fail. Maybe we need to talk about this and look at the section that they're failing on so that they know that maybe they needed more emphasis on water heaters or whatever. And we don't, one of the other reasons it's very difficult to track that is that a tradesman may work for company XYZ and take all their training from one trainer when they're an apprentice, and then they may switch over and work for another company that uses another trainer. So all their training doesn't always come from the same provider. So it's really difficult. But what we did look at are the people that took prep classes, and we looked at that for a while. Did you pass because you took a prep class, or did you not take a prep class and have more failures? And it was still really difficult to tell. So we do reach out whenever we believe that there's a problem or that you have a group that's lacking in one area. So anyway, and I know the reason why we have a 24.3% that are retakes right now. Of course, we've got a lot of people scheduled for exam. And nothing says that makes you a worse plumber or a better plumber if you fail the first time. Second time you come back, you might make a really high score. You pass or you pass, and that 70%, that's, you know, pretty norm for the norm. So yeah, the likelihood of having 80 and 90%, we're not going to have that. That would be questionable on our part. So anyway, if anyone else has any other questions, I've got numbers here, and I'm going to share them with everybody, and happy to do so. I also wanted to say that one of the other, I think I failed to mention this earlier, that we're attending the Building Professional Institute up in Irving this week with a group of inspectors. We have one of our investigators there, and there are some providers there as well. They also offer continuing education during that particular meeting, and we try to participate in that as well. So all that said, we've got all kinds of things going on, and if anybody's got a question, I'll answer it. If not, I guess we'll move on to, I think I got all of those. I got part of 8 too, Mr. Denton, unless you wanted to talk about the next item.
Board members, are there any questions of Lisa at this point? Who's next on our agenda here? Would it be Richard or would it be Steve?
We actually, under 8, we have, and we can, this is up to you. Well, if you wanted me to talk about reciprocity, and or I also included this list of the breakdown.
No, Lisa, I want to skip that and put that, I want to do that this afternoon.
Okay. 'cause
Number 8.
I put
Let's
the-
go strictly to staff reports.
Okay. Number 8 is, there's some items in there for that as well. And so, yeah, the next one, we have Richard. That would be all the financial items on 10.
Richard, are you with us?
Yes, sir, I sure am.
Okay, take it away.
Okay. I believe my statements are under tab number 5 in your materials. And looking at the first page, there's 2 schedules on that page. And the first schedule shows our original appropriation for fiscal year 2021, and plus any transfers and additional revenues we've received and what the board ended up spending in each strategy through the 3rd quarter, which is through the end of May of this year. And included in that first schedule is also the 5% budget reduction by state leadership due to the COVID pandemic. The second schedule shows the agency expenditures by category so far for the first 9 months. And our percentage theoretically would be at about 75%. We're at 71.1, so we're spending very conservatively. The next page, the board continues with 3 strong quarters in collecting its revenue. Our license revenue has actually decreased a little bit, mainly due to the reduction in our responsible master plumber fee from $420 to $300. The examination application revenues for the first 3 quarters has increased significantly. It's 28.1% increase. That's a good increase. Had a lot of exam applications come through. Our administrative penalties have also increased significantly this year due to some large penalties having been collected by the enforcement department. And overall, we're just a little bit higher for the first 3 quarters of 2021 as compared to the first 3 quarters of last year, 2020. A reminder for our new board members that these revenues don't go into our checking account. They go directly into the state's general fund. So we just get to get it and move it over there. Page 3 shows the estimated number of license, registration, and examination fees received for the first 3 quarters and compares it to the first 3 quarters of fiscal year 2020. And on page 4 is a revenue analysis by month for the first 3 quarters of fiscal year 2021. Plus, I've also included June in there as well. So you can take a look compared to the previous 5 years by month and by year. And notice in March, we had the highest amount of fees ever collected. So we're on track to be a little bit lower overall than last year. Once again, that's due to that responsible master plumber fee reduction. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. I think that's pretty good. When you look at that master fee reduction, that was a $1 million hit to our budget.
Mm-hmm. We don't have a full year in there. I think that started in December or January of this year, so we don't have a full year of that fee reduction.
Okay. I think one of our board members had a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's Justin. I had a question for Richard.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that March is our highest month ever, and I mean, by a pretty large margin. Is that because we had a backlog prior to that because of COVID, or what do you attribute that to?
I mean, I believe it's mainly due to, we had so many additional plumbers that we were trying to get registered or licensed after the freeze in February.
Oh, okay.
So it's the month after the freeze, and we did I know Lisa and they did a tremendous effort to try to get people licensed so they could practice plumbing in Texas. And Lisa could probably on that a little bit.
Yeah, no, I didn't put 2 and 2 together, but that explains it. Thank you.
Justin, I believe there was a surge of about 400 additional plumbers that came into the system, both re-entries who had let their license lapse, as well as plumbers coming from other states. So there was about a 400 spike there as a result of the freeze, and it's welcome. It helped us. Richard, from your perspective, we've got, I guess, what, July and August left this year. Do our numbers look good to you from a financial standpoint? Are we meeting our targets and both expenditures and revenues?
Yes, we're right on schedule, I believe. We're actually, you expected a little bit more of a decrease in the revenues because of the responsible master fee reduction, but we're, if you take the last 2 months of fiscal year 2020 and plug it in, it looks like we'd only be maybe a couple $100,000 less. Once again, that's
pretty good.
more money to the state that doesn't come into our pockets.
And Richard, am I correct that that was $1 million reduction in our budget when we lowered that fee to the responsible master funds? Was it about that, or was it?
It was a $1 million. Yes, you're correct. That's a $1 million estimated revenue reduction to the state, not to us.
Mm-hmm. Right. Which I'm good with. To me, fees we charge are just another 3-letter word for tax. So whenever we can reduce our fees, I'm for it. And we reduced them by $1 million, and the plumbers were the beneficiary of it. And I think it's good work. As long as we're generating the revenue to cover our expenses, that's our goal. So, Richard, anything else that you need to point out to us, or?
Not really. We've got about 6 more weeks of spending, and we will spend every dollar of our expenditure budget.
But we're no more.
No, well, we can't spend any more. They won't let us.
Okay.
When you hit zero, you hit zero.
But we're not going to owe anybody at the end of the year anyway. So.
No.
All right. Any other questions of Richard before we let him go? Justin, anything? Okay. Thank you, Richard. We appreciate the work that you do. I appreciate what you've done the last 6 months since I've known you. All the reports you put together for the legislature to get us through that. In every respect, I really appreciate the work that you've done. I'm very comfortable with our finances, knowing that you're watching every penny. So thanks for your work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is Steve ready? Steve, are you there?
Yes, sir. Ready to go.
There you are. All right. Steve, if you will take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to go through several items here. The first thing you'll notice under 11 enforcement matters, A, the schedule of applicants. These are ones that are coming back for approval by the board, and this will take action will have to be taken by the board and signed by the chairman. If accepted, these are concerning individuals again that have had a previous license or registration, and due to incarceration, that license or registration has been revoked. They are applying now to either get the apprentice registration or applying to take an examination. You'll notice there's a list of 7, starting out with David Anthony Botello. And I do believe Mr. Botello is available in case you have any questions. All have been contacted and offered the opportunity to either participate through Zoom or in person. Moses J. Campuzano, I hope I said that right. Mitchell A. Cogdell, Brian G. Jones, Christopher Montez, Dallas Lee Moss, and Cody W. Smith. These have been reviewed and are being brought before the board for possible registrations or approval to take their exam.
I don't know what I would do without you. The apprentices, of course, there's no exam required. The reason he said that, I had questioned Steve prior to the meeting about the one individual, number 6, is a journeyman whose license had been revoked, and it's been revoked now for 4 years. And our approval of this list does not mean that that person automatically returns to journeyman. What it entitles him, just like anyone else who let their license lapse, he can retake the journeyman exam in order to be relicensed as a journeyman. So this, by our approval of these, it doesn't mean he automatically goes back to journeyman, but he is entitled to take the test and be licensed if he passes the test. So, Mr. Patello is here. Mr. Patello, this would be the time if you have any. The staff has recommended approval of your application, and if you wish to make a comment, you or Mr. Gonzalez, who I think is with you there, if you wish to make a comment, you're welcome to, but you're not required to. Okay, you prefer not to make a statement then. Okay. Board members, you've heard the list. The recommendation of staff is that these 7 individuals be approved after their license was revoked to re-enter the industry. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation of staff?
So made. Mark Savasta.
Motion by Mr. Savesta. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Freeman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
is this something that would require authorization for the chairman to sign the schedule?
You tell me.
I think so. I would add that as a second motion.
Is there a motion that the chair be allowed to sign these approvals?
Ron Ainsworth, so moved.
Second.
Robbie, yeah, second.
Robbie, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we got Steve. Move on to item B.
B is summary of cease and desist orders. This does not require signature approval by the board, but these are the list of those cases that have come before that have some, most of them I think you'll find were advertising or offering, may had to do with, I'm not for sure, but some of course possibly had something to do with winter storm, advertising, offering, plumbing. Most of these you also find that we did make contact, we did inform them of the plumbing license law and board rules, and they did show at least that they were going to come into compliance. But with having that said, we wanted to make sure we issued a cease and desist just to make sure just in case something didn't come into place and we find out later that they didn't come into compliance, and we have actually issued that cease and desist, and if they do violate that, of course, we will act upon it. This is a list starting with Arul Arus, Danny R. Harner, Robert Haskin, Timothy Allen McKee, Thomas Paul, Christopher Prado, Gerardo Rodriguez Jr., Matthew Seaman, Bryce Stillwell, Louis F. Valdez, and Devin M. Weaver. And that's the list. And I don't hear anything, so.
No action necessary on our part, just for our information, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Nothing under item C.
C is the board order of administrative penalties. And this one will require action, I do believe. It's going to list those respondents who were issued penalties. The board order, and this will show, these are all penalties that have been paid and received. There's 9 pages of those that have been issued. The last page will be a list of those who were previous violators. And there's like 2 pages of those. So it'll show those that, again, had a previous violation and then we're on this new list. And I do believe, like I said before, there is action required on this. Let Vina.
Yeah, we will need to approve if the board has no questions. Is there any questions among board members of any of these cases under item D? These are default orders. Basically, there was one case there, and I can't remember the name, Steve, that I had asked you about.
Okay, this isn't the default order yet. This is just the board order. For board order of administrative penalties.
So you're still on C?
Item C, yes, sir.
Where is that list? Because I don't see it on my agenda. What tab are we looking at?
Should be tab 8.
Tab 8. Mr. Chair, I have a question real quick for Steve, if I could, please.
Sure.
Steve, the very first one, Brandon Adams, contract for offer to perform plumbing work without securing the services of an RMP, but he's got an RMP number listed by his name. Did he qualify for that after the violation occurred?
At the point in time of the violation, he did not have a current responsible master license.
Thank you.
Good question.
We see that periodically, not very often, but we do see it periodically.
Well, I'm glad he came into compliance later.
Well, the penalty on that is quite a bit higher. So the settlement offer was, I mean, it seems high, but it is a settlement, and it is typically on that case probably a 25% offer. So, any other questions? We want to move to D.
No, Ben's got another question.
Okay.
Sorry, when I'm on the wrong page, it doesn't let me talk. It looks like that the dates of when these judgments are happening is becoming a lot quicker. Towards the end of the document, it looks like some of these were issued just as recently as April, and they've already paid.
Right. Well, again, our resolution time is creeping lower. I think our last quarter, our resolution time is down to just under 3 months. So
that's where I was going with that, was wanted to give you a compliment for accelerating that process.
Well, thank you. Wasn't expecting that, but I'll take it. Thank you.
Steve, I do have one question. The asterisk by the certain people's names, does that mean they were repeat? I don't remember what the asterisk was for.
That is, they're on the previous should be on the previous violator list. So if you'll go to after page 9, should be the previous violator list, and then those should be asterisked on the board order.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So we will get to this later in our agenda. But Ben, at some point in the very near future, Steve and I talked about this prior to the board meeting. And I know I have a particular interest in enforcement matters. I'd like to revisit or review our penalty matrix of what we're doing here. We'll bring this up later in the meeting when we talk about future board agenda items. But if there are other board members that would like to participate in that, I don't know when the last time these penalty matrix were looked at. One thing that catches my eye, and we had one on this agenda item, is someone who's been a continuous repeat offender. And I wonder if we are ratcheting those up enough. It's one thing when you make a mistake, but when we come back to you in time after time after time, you continue to violate the same rule. We need, And I want to make no mistake about it. This agency is not in the business of fining and enforcement. We're in the business of compliance. But in order to have compliance, you have got to have enforcement. So enforcement is a tool to ensure compliance. And in order to get people's attention, we're going to have these repeat offenders. In my mind, is not. I don't have a lot of sympathy for them. I understand first time, might even understand second time. We've got some folks that are showing up for the same thing time after time after time. And I would be an advocate of ratcheting these penalties up. But I'd like for us, for a couple of board members, maybe before the September meeting, to review those. Maybe Melton, you and Ben might work on those penalty matrix. I think it's good to have a public member as well as a plumber. And but we can talk about that later in the meeting. But that's kind of what I'd like to review. And if you have recommendations or comments, if you think it's great, leave it the same. At our next board meeting, you can come back and we discuss it as a board and make any modifications if necessary. But we'll talk about that later in the meeting when we get to future agenda items. Any other questions on board orders of administrative penalties paid by agreement? Okay, having no further discussion, is there a motion to approve these administrative penalties paid by agreement? And if necessary, the board chair sign the document authorizing these approvals.
Dave Yelovich, so moved.
Dave Yelovich moves. Is a second? Second by Mr. Janos. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Steve.
On item D, consideration of possible default final orders. In this, we'll have a default order schedule that'll need to be signed by the board chair if approved. And then also the individual default orders will have to be signed. I want to make a note that I'm not sure if it's on your list still, but if number 9 is still Douglas Allen Williams, that one has been removed. I do not think it's on the actual order schedule, but it might be on the agenda. So
it is on our agenda.
Okay. So that one has been stricken, and I believe it has. I looked and see it has been stricken from the order schedule already. So having said that, these are default orders. And it goes by the following: Andrew J. De Hoyos, Roberto Hernandez, Trevor Blaine Mareca, Raimondo Lopez Jr., Jose Paredes, Eduardo Guzman Rodriguez, Leo Smith, Zachary Wagner, and Fernando Zapata. And those are for your consideration for default final orders.
And you know, a default order, as Steve told me, I questioned him on one of the cases that it said that the respondent didn't fail to respond. And yet later in the order, it said that in the respondent's response, and I asked Steve, how can it be a default if the respondent did in fact respond to the complaint? And he explained to me that yes, he did respond to the complaint. They proposed an order and he quit taking their calls. So he started responding, but once the agency informed him of the amount of the penalty, I guess, Steve.
The notice of alleged violation, correct. Yeah.
And once an NOAV was sent out, basically he quit corresponding or responding. Is that correct on that?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, is there a motion to approve these default final orders found on your agenda, with the exception of number 9, Douglas Allen Williams, which should be removed, as well as authorizing the chair to sign the individual and collective documents authorizing these penalties?
Milton, so moved.
Second, Mark.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Steve, I think you got one more.
Okay, the final E was a motion for rehearing. And I don't know how you want to pursue this. If you want me just to dive in and give you kind of a background and.
Yeah, I'd like for you just
Okay.
give the board the background.
So under F, the Serena Zindler case, the complaint number was 2020-00785, the case number 2021-00366. This was a complaint that was sent, the complainant's name was Nicole Eggleston, and Miss Eggleston was sent she lives in a condominium, and there is a property management and a condominium association involved that evidently does some of the repair work according to their agreement, although the condominium itself is under requirement to be maintained by the homeowners. The association is Oakwood Gardens Condominium Association. An APC Property Management is the one that is actually the registered agent listed, and sent a maintenance contractor to work on a main sewer line cleaning. They had also a problem with low water pressure. The individual that was sent out is, according to the complainant, it was the same person that does maintains the roof and also does other siding repairs. No one, she didn't get any information that any of the individuals that came out to do the plumbing work were actually licensed by the state. They removed a toilet, ran an auger through a drain. Miss Eggleston was billed by Oakwood Garden Condominium Association. The bill actually said bill back for service call, shower head full of debris, toilet clogged, for the price of $225. The field investigator was Sydney Langford in this case, and Sydney made contact with several individuals that were noted as in Secretary of State's Texas Franchise Tax Public Information Report, the Secretary of State entity filing, that we found several individuals that were managers of the association, and one individual, Serena Zindler, was actually the president of the association. They did get a response back from one of the members, and they made it clear that the individual that was sent out was a maintenance contractor, but that person was not an employee of the association or the management company. We requested additional information on who was the licensed plumber that was sent out. Of course, the homeowner was very concerned on who was doing plumbing work and if they were properly licensed in the state. We got no response back with that for any information on who actually did the plumbing work, if they actually sent a licensed a company with a responsible master plumber to the site. The only thing that we had as far as any evidence was actually the invoice sent by the Oakwood Association, and it was an invoice for plumbing work that was performed. We sent out since we got no other response back, we sent out a notice of alleged violation to Miss Zindler. Make sure Zindler. That went out on December 11th, 2020. We got no response, and we require a 20-day response on whether they want to accept that settlement offer, or if they want to contest that notice of alleged violation. We in turn sent a notice of default, which that is actually a pre-letter that we send. That's a letter that goes out usually 3 weeks ahead of time before the board meeting, before we actually are going to request a default final order. Just to let them know that, you know, this is what our intentions are if we don't get a response. So again, that was sent out March the 22nd, 2021. We didn't get a response back on that. So the default final order was, of course, went to the board with it, got the order, we mailed it out May the 25th, 2021. So then we did get contact back from their attorney, Mr. Lewis, on June the 21st, 2021. Now, along with that motion of rehearing, we did actually get some additional information on a contractor. So with that additional information,
Steve,
yes, sir.
let me stop you there. I don't think we need to get into the investigation that you're doing going forward.
As far as
so as not to enter into any kind of ex parte communication. Let's let you do your part and do your investigation. And listening to your explanation, it's helpful. But the bottom line is we got the wrong person, and we've named the wrong person and entered a default against them. Is Mr. Lewis, Dawn, do we have any indication Mr. Lewis or the respondent is here that wishes to make any comment? Okay. Not present and hadn't contacted us. Mr. Lewis, the attorney for the respondent, sent in a 2-3 page response that basically says what Steve has explained to us. But I have to tell you, for the purposes of our motion here today, none of that makes any difference. This is a motion for rehearing on a default order, and the facts surrounding this case really don't have much to do with it. The only germane issue is, why didn't you respond? Yes or no? And fortunately for the respondent and for the attorney, item number 5 in the attorney's response says we did not receive the notice of alleged violation mailed on December 14th. So that is germane. That's a reason that we should vacate this order if the board chooses to do so. But the rest of these facts really are not to be taken in consideration in making our decision, because those are facts that should have been made prior to now. You can't argue your case once you're in default. The purpose of this hearing is, why didn't you respond? And fortunately, the respondent, the attorney, number 5 covers that. I didn't get the notice. And the background is good to know because we want to do the right thing. My recommendation to the board, and if there are any questions, bring them up. Ron, did you have one?
Yes, Steve, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are they attempting to resolve the matter now? Are they cooperating?
I don't know how far I want to go with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I had asked him not to get into.
Well, okay, but my point is, for us in action, I mean, if we've got an order and if there was a mistake made, obviously we want to correct it. But I guess my question is, are they assisting us in resolving it properly?
I think
I will tell you this.
And a solution.
I was just going to say, I can tell you this. I'm not finished.
Okay.
Let me suggest this to the board. I think it will answer your question. My recommendation to the board is that we grant the motion.
Mr. Chairman, you're on mute.
Am I back on again?
Yes.
Okay. My recommendation is that we grant the motion for rehearing. We vacate the previous order and dismiss the case, but we do so without prejudice. Without prejudice would mean that if Steve's investigation implicates this person that we're dismissing this case, then Steve would be free to refile this case against this individual. If we dismiss it with prejudice, he can never reopen this case against that individual again. But if we vacate the order and dismiss it without prejudice, and that's my recommendation, then Steve is free to let the investigation go anywhere it needs to go and name anyone that needs to be named, including this respondent, if the facts turn out that way. Does that make sense? Anyone else have any questions? And if not, is there a motion to grant the motion for rehearing, vacate the order, and dismiss the case without prejudice?
So move.
Mr. Janos moves. Is there a second?
Ron Ainsworth, second.
Second by Mr. Ainsworth. Any additional questions?
Just a quick question, Mr. Chair. It's Justin on the
Yes, sir.
line. Steve mentioned that he wasn't finished presenting this, but do we need to go ahead and take this motion up first and then let him finish with the details, or
No, actually,
or will that come up at a subsequent meeting?
it'll come up in another meeting.
Okay.
We as a board should not get involved or in investigations until they come to us as a quasi judicial matter. The board doesn't investigate cases. That's the staff's job. And any of our participation in that might be considered ex parte communication. And we just need to stay away from it. Let Steve do his job. If he's got a complaint and he wants to file it, let him do it and bring it back to us after he's done his work. So,
okay, good by me.
hey, we have any other questions or comments? Okay, y'all have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Steve.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
What else, Steve?
I believe that's all. I think item 12 would be continuing professional education. So I think my portion is.
Would you do that? Are you ready? Lisa, do we have any other staff reports, or do you have anything that you missed?
Hmm.
We have some technical difficulties we're trying to work out. As soon as we do, Lisa will be speaking.
Well, I'm going to be Dawn for a second. Can you hear me now? Hooray. There we go. I was going to say we have one more item there under CE that is an education item for Mr. Jalnos. But I wanted to add also, and I know we're going to discuss CE items, but as we move towards our new program for CE and training, Dawn will move over and take care of all of the training in CE and become the education coordinator, so to speak. So the people that are used to seeing her in one position, they're going to soon see her totally wrapped up in CE and education. So I did want to mention that earlier. And then we have one instructor.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. Dawn, congratulations. I spoke to her before the meeting and I told her that no one in this organization is indispensable, including myself or any board member, but she comes as close as I know of any person that's indispensable. Every way you turn, you look to Dawn, and Dawn, CEs and training are going to be, continuing education is going to be a huge part of a new evolution of our plumbing board. There's going to be some huge changes for the benefit of the plumbers and for the providers. And I can't think of any person that I feel more comfortable in heading that program up than yourself. You've been doing it all along anyway. So it'll let you really focus and give you some authority and responsibility beyond what that you already do. So thank you, Dawn. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Robbie, do you want to handle item number 12? And as soon as we do, if it's okay with the group, let's maybe take 45 minutes for lunch and a brief break, and then we'll pick up the rest of the items as soon as Mr. Janos finishes with this one.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 12 has to do with we received a application for a new course instructor. His name is Abel Medina. He is going to work under the WIN Career Education provider, and all his documentation has been submitted and is correct. And I make a motion that we approve Abel Medina to become a course instructor for CPE.
Discussion, or is there a second to the motion, Mr. Janos' motion?
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You know, before we break for lunch, Helen and Vina had been diligently watching. Helen, did you have anything that you wanted to add along the staff reports having to do with the new bill, or you're going to be a part of our discussion this afternoon? Would you rather do it after lunch, or you're muted?
Is that better?
That you did it. Good.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, no, I won't keep anybody from their lunch. So if there's any specific questions about House Bill 636, I think we can take them up later, and I'll try and touch on some of them during the rule amendments, rule proposals this afternoon.
Okay. Well, I put you to a lot of trouble to say no. But anyway,
discuss with anybody who has questions about it,
okay.
or later.
So we will. It is 11:45. Let's break until 12:30, and then at 12:30 we will reconvene and take up the discussion items as well as the rule proposals and adoptions that are left on our agenda. So with that being said, let's recess until 12:30. Thank you.
What are you doing for lunch?
12:37. Call the meeting back to order and move now to the items for proposal for posting as well as adoption starting. And Helen, this is going to kind of be a Helen segment of the meeting. Let's start with the one item that's ready for adoption, which is item number 14. If you'll just kind of give us a rundown on that, and then we'll vote to formally adopt that rule.
All right, can you hear me now? All right, great. Thank you, Kevin or Dawn, for working your magic. So as the chairman stated, this is agenda item 14 concerning Rule 365.6. This is a non-substantive rule amendment to make the agency's longstanding policy of crediting former licensees returning to plumbing with their previous hours and/or years of experience. And so the goal of this is to make that policy more explicit. So the proposed amendment was published in the June 11th edition of the Texas Register. Board staff didn't receive any comments related to the proposed rule amendment during the 30-day comment period. And if any members have any questions about this agenda item, I'd be happy to answer them or let the board chair go ahead and make a motion.
Members, are there any questions about this? Again, as Helen has explained to us, this is a non-substantive issue. Just clarifying the language that if a plumber leaves for a period of time and is not eligible to renew their license, that it's clear to them that they get credit for all the hours that they spent previous to that. And all they have to do is register as an apprentice, take the test, and they're back in business. So if there are no questions, is there a motion that we adopt this Rule 365.6?
Mr. Chairman, Robbie Jonas makes that motion.
Justin seconds.
Motion and a second to adopt the amendment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Helen, if you would just give us kind of a brief rundown on starting with number 13. And I might add for board members as well as for members of the public who might be listening in. You might recall we started this a couple of months ago and posted these proposed rule changes on our website. And we had received considerable amount of feedback on those rules, offering suggestions and support and criticism. And these are finished to the standpoint that we're going to post them on the Texas Register. It's not the public's last bite out of the apple. Once these are posted on the Texas Register, anyone can provide comment in support of or opposed or amendments suggested for the 30-day period that they're posted. After they've been posted for 30 days, and Helen provides the board with all the comments that are received, at some point in the future, not necessarily at our next board meeting, we can formally adopt these rules. Until such time as that final adoption takes place, everyone needs to understand that the rules that are in place today are the ones that we follow. These are strictly preliminary procedures that we have to follow before we finally adopt them. And the reason I say that we may not adopt them at the next board meeting, some of them require further work and additional modifications. And just to give you an example, when you get to the one having to do with endorsements moving from 3 years to 1 year, whichever that is, and when you get to it, that's a good one, and we're going to do it. But what we have not done, which is also in the rules, is adjusted the fee. If they're now paying a fee for a 3-year endorsement, it's going to require a rule adjustment to make that, to lower that to a 1-year endorsement. We're not going to make them pay for a 3-year endorsement for 1 year. So there is still work to be done on our rules going forward. So, but once we get them proposed, once we get our public comment, we'll have them in place that we can formally adopt them at some future date down the road. So, Helen, I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
It's all right. Okay, so this is agenda item 13 concerning Rule 365.5. The proposed amendments to Rule 365.5 incorporate legislative changes to Chapter 1301 of the Texas Occupations Code, also known as the plumbing license law. And namely, those changes are endorsements going from the 3-year to the 1-year renewal cycle. And that's so that they sync with their underlying license, whether it's a master, journeyman, or inspector. And so this will help streamline things. And that's basically the legislature's intent and the board's intent in adopting these rules. If anybody has any particular questions about this agenda item, I'd be happy to answer those now.
Helen, Dave here. Maybe it's just me. I'm the new guy on the block. Going from 3 years to 1 year, is there a reason for doing that? I do agree with Frank as far as the fees would need to be adjusted. But what about every year, how does that increase the work on the staff as far as handling all these renewals and things? What are the numbers involved that staff will have to be chasing now on a yearly basis versus every 3rd year?
I can't really speak to the numbers, and to be honest, we don't really have a choice. This was something the legislature decided to take action on. And so it's 1 year. It'll be 1 year. We have to make the change. As far as correcting
you have
the
anything to comment on that?
If I can talk.
I guess while Lisa's getting ready, I will say, I think we've already begun kind of implementing this. So if someone is renewing currently, we don't require their endorsement fee to necessarily hold up the renewal of that underlying journeyman, master, or inspector license.
I'm curious because I don't know where it came from, but I know every license I have, every certification I have, almost none of them are renewed every year. And it's a paperwork nightmare the more things you have. And I was just curious why we went from 3 down to 1, because it creates work for the person with the license as well as the staff here. But I know TDLR, the Real Estate Commission, number of things are multi-year, and it just seemed weird going down to 1.
I think their rationale was that it would renew at the same time the underlying license would, and somehow that would be more convenient for them. Whether that turns out to be the case or not, I don't know that we know that yet, but we'll try and make it as convenient as possible for the licensee or registrant.
Helen, I think you hit on really the thing that could actually work to our advantage. As I understand it, I'm going to let Lisa correct me if I'm wrong, but the annual renewal date and the endorsement date are not necessarily the same date. One may renew in January and the endorsement may renew every 3 years in June. So the staff is having to keep up with 2 sets of licenses, whereas when they go to a renewal now on a license, if they have an endorsement, they do it all at one time with one look. They don't have to look at every endorsement. Am I right about that as an advantage to the staff, Lisa?
Yes, sir. There is an advantage to the staff. And one of the things, just to back up just a little bit, and I missed part of it, so I apologize. But the endorsements typically renew every 3 years, and it's based on the code that comes out for med gas and fire sprinkler. Is not on the same yearly basis as the plumbing code. And so the original setup for the 3-year endorsement renewal was based on the code cycle. But when we discussed this with Sunset, they wanted them to renew together. So we put into place some items to start moving them together during Sunset. And so as we moved towards this and we got the House bill all done, we have authority to implement and make the rest of the changes. But what'll happen now is, and it's already happening, when someone renews their plumbing license, it doesn't hold them up if they haven't taken continuing ed for med gas and paid that additional fee for med gas. It's all rolled into one. And so rather than us getting phone calls saying, oh, you didn't renew my plumbing license. Well, you don't have your continuing ed for med gas. We don't have that problem now. It's all rolled together. And as we make a few more computer changes, it'll be easier to process for staff. It'll be easier for the licensee too. And the other thing we did is they can see their education online. So all they've got to do is look online and say, ooh, I don't have my med gas. I better hurry and get it. And we run those reports and we can periodically look at them. And if someone is negligent, then we can address that.
I think the bottom line, and Helen hit on the key point, it is going to work to our advantage, but quite frankly, we don't have an option because it's in the statute. But it's not bad news for us. As a matter of fact, I don't think there's anything in 636 that's bad news for us. Some is better than others, but everything is good for us as far as the efficiency of the agency. So, any other questions on 365.5? Yes, Helen.
I just wanted to chime in since we were talking about 636. If anyone's curious, it's in section 18 of the bill. If they want to go back and see where that requirement is, that the board adopt a rule.
Any other discussions or questions? Is there a motion to adopt our?
Ben, I'll motion to adopt.
Motion for publication for public comment, not to adopt it, for publication for public comment. I have a motion from Ben.
Yes, sir.
Second?
Second from Robbie.
Second from Robbie. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Number 15.
Okay, great. This concerns Rule 365.14, and the proposed amendments to Rule 365.14 incorporate legislative changes to the plumbing license law again. Specifically, new section 1301.4055 of the Texas Occupations Code. This requires the board to adopt a rule to ensure each licensee, registrant, or endorsement holder has 12 months to satisfy their continuing education requirements. Again, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
For you long-term board members, and I guess even plumbers on the board, our continuing education system, in my opinion, was a total mess. We had a 12-month period of time that did not correspond with the renewal dates. We had a renewal date at one time, and then the CE period started at a different time, which was a different 12-month period. So some people had less than 12 months in order to get those CEs. So what this is a move in part to make those renewal dates and the 12-month CE requirement sync so that it's all the same. Lisa, I'm going to trust you to chime in on this also. If there's any relevant point that needs to be made on these rule changes. Lisa's having trouble here, so she's having to share with Dawn her headset.
Sorry, sir.
Is there anything else that you want to add about this? Is lining up the renewal date with the 12-month CE date and moving away from that separate arbitrary date that required them to get their CEs within 12 months. Correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is a wonderful thing for staff, for the plumbers, for all parts of it. And it's also going to allow us to have the material be relevant for a longer period of time. And the things that are going to make this roll inside the system are already begun to put in place. One part of it at a time has to occur, but it's a good thing. We're certainly almost moved completely towards what Sunset wanted to do.
You know, I'd been here for 6 years. I still couldn't figure out when I was supposed to get my CE. I tried and tried and tried, and I never could figure it out.
It's going to be, believe me, it's a good thing for staff.
Well, it's a good thing for me because now I understand when they're supposed to get their 6 hours. So
This is something that we've looked forward to for a long time. So, and not to jump over into the other parts of it, but just the availability of information and material and all of it is going to be a good thing.
any questions or comments on 365.14 before we make a motion for posting?
I have one question for Helen. This bill also has the continuing education may be taken via correspondence course or virtually by means of telecommunication equipment. Is that part of this bill? Where virtual classes can continue?
Yes, that's included in the rule language. It's the bill doesn't necessarily talk about the virtual courses, but within the board's jurisdiction to implement and oversee continuing education, that was added in. Correspondence is in the statute, but we added the virtual, and I think we'll probably go ahead and expand on that as far as minimum requirements, security, to verify that, you know, the person signed up is actually the one taking the course. So I think that's something that's in the works, but we definitely want to allow that convenience that has come so in handy during COVID, during the winter storm, in addition to the extensions we've offered our licensees and registrants.
It's been great. I've done it the last 2 years, and it's been, you know, a blessing. It's just a good way to take the class.
Quick comment myself on this. We're talking about syncing up CE with license renewal. The license renewals are staggered. And we're talking about a calendar year CE.
No, we're talking about a 12-month period of time.
Okay, so you're going to have 12 months from your date to get your CEs.
You're actually going to, you're actually going, yeah, you're going to have the full 12 months. And the material, should you end up late, unfortunately, some people do, that material is going to be available for a much longer period of time. So if someone wants to take a certain program, they can. And they'll have a full 12 months to take it. And they don't have to worry about when. It's a calendar year. And the problem before, like Mr. Dent was saying, it's somewhat arbitrary, but the reason why it was arbitrary is because of the beginning and end date of when the board rules went into place initially.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, 365.14, is there a motion for these to be posted in the Texas Register?
Justin so moves.
Second.
Who made the motion? Mark made the motion?
No, I had the second.
Justin did.
Justin.
Okay.
I made the motion.
Justin, I keep forgetting you're there because you're not sitting up here. So Justin makes a motion, Mark second to adopt, not to adopt, but to propose 365.14 posted in the Texas Register. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Helen?
Okay, moving on to Rule 365.15. This proposed amendment incorporates legislative changes again, specifically sections 19 and 20 of HB 636. And those sections require the board to establish minimum curriculum standards for continuing education courses and training programs. And these sections of House Bill 636 also call for the executive director to approve the courses and programs that meet those minimum curriculum standards set by the board. Additionally, staff has proposed several nationally recognized or accredited training programs with a focus on safety. that would not need to go through the executive director approval process. For instance, OSHA courses, Red Cross, American Red Cross courses, NFPA 99 and ASSE Series 1200 courses. And this rule amendment also proposes renaming the rule to minimum curriculum standards to better describe the contents within the rule, although for now we'll continue referring to it by its current name, which is Course Materials for Continuing Professional Education Programs. And if anybody has any questions about this rule, I'm happy to answer those.
Questions, anyone? I'm not sure that everyone realizes it yet, but I believe what we're doing today is moving into one of the most exciting eras for CE providers as well as for plumbers that we've been in years and years and years. This is going to allow a diverse amount of material to be adopted for teaching CE courses. It's going to have a lot more diversity. I hope, and I have a lot of confidence in our CE providers. I anticipate plumbers, instead of dreading taking CE, are going to be looking forward to going to a CE class and getting some new and innovative ideas and fresh material every year. And I consider this probably one of the best things that has happened to plumbers in years. Not that we had a bad system, but I think this incorporates, number one, our method of approving course content was cumbersome and it was timely. It was allowed only one time a year. You had to bring it before the board. It's quite an ordeal in order to get material approved. The legislation, which I support, and I think it's a good idea, moves that responsibility to our executive director. It's going to provide for easy access and approval of courses. It's going to provide for a diverse subject matter to be utilized in that. And I believe that our CE providers are going to really have some fun with this and really be a benefit for our plumbers. I think our plumbers are going to be looking forward to attending CE classes if the providers do what I think that they're going to do. They're going to gladly go to CE classes. It's not going to be a drudgery, but it's going to be something they look forward to. And bottom line, it's going to make them a better plumber. And it's going to protect the consumer. So I couldn't be more excited about what we're doing on these CEs. I think everything we do is important and is going to have an impact, but I believe this is really fundamentally going to make a huge impact on plumbers and the consumers and the providers, all to the advantage of all three of them. So any other comments or questions, Ben?
Lisa, this gives you the ability to approve content for CE. So that's how I'm reading it. Are you going to approve things like specific material training or product training or manufacturer that can sponsor a training or anything like that?
We've actually updated the list and been much more specific to some of the items, but then also left some room for things that are generic, such as the manufacturers. And we may have to go so far as to do some additional rules, but there's a lot of good programs out there put out by manufacturers, by the water heater manufacturers and that sort of thing, and great learning materials that aren't necessarily put out there to sell the product, but to advise someone and teach them the proper installation of that particular product.
So not brand specific, but more educational.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's the list we worked on a while back, and we've got more work to do, but we're also open to some suggestions. And we've gotten a lot of good information sent to us too, people that they're interested in. So we'll get some guidelines together as we move forward.
So the course providers can provide options, suggestions for content that they would
Sure.
like to teach, as well as even the plumbers. You would entertain ideas from the plumbers as to what they would like to see too, or would it?
And I've actually heard from several plumbers on what they would like to see. And so that kind of spawned additional items that were on the list that we started putting together.
I love it because those are the guys that are in the field working with it,
Exactly.
and they want to
Yeah.
learn and teach their apprentices and stuff. So that's great.
Yeah, I
But, you know,
really
I would-
do. I think everybody's going to be happy once and we'll learn from it, but it's exciting to finally get this all put together.
You know, I would suggest plumbers not contact the agency about ideas and course material, contact the providers, the CE providers. Those are the ones that are going to be submitting it to the agency for approval.
Mm-hmm.
And the plumbers, for the first time, are going to be selecting CE providers and voting with their checkbook. For those CE providers who provide innovative and interesting and fresh material, plumbers are going to gravitate to them. Those that don't will probably fall down. But there are some great opportunities for CE providers to really put together some innovative and attractive programs. And we've got some first-class, top-notch CE providers across the board. So I don't think there's going to be a shortage of material being submitted for approval, because we're trying to make it open and wide enough that a diverse amount of material, something that's informative but also enjoyable and needed by the plumbers. And if the plumbers want education in a certain area when they sign up for a CE course, I would suspect the CE provider is going to solicit some input from the plumbers at the CE course. What would you like to see in the future? What ideas do you have? So I think there's just some wonderful opportunities. And the one thing I hear from plumbers is CE is a 6-hour sentence that I have to serve every year. And I want that to change. And I think the providers can do it. And I think they're going to be looking forward to getting new and innovative ideas, and shop around and find the provider that's got the most interesting program, the most up-to-date, and most meaningful, that means something to a plumber. So.
And you know, one of the things that's going to be different is there's going to be providers that are going to offer a full bundle of X, Y, and Z that's going to equal 6 hours. And then there's going to be providers that are going to let them pick and choose from 20 items to equal the 6 hours. And so a lot of diversity, a lot of choices.
I think that's what the plumbers want to hear. They're probably not on this call or on this meeting, but hopefully they'll get the message that their voices have been heard. And that should get them excited to want to continue learning and get that CE credit that's required.
You know, keep in mind that 3 of the 6 hours is mandated. So really, there are 3 of the 6 hours that are required under statute to be taught, subject matter that's required to be taught. And the flexibility comes in the other 3 hours. So that hasn't changed. So don't be mad at a CE provider if he spends 3 hours on something you've heard before. The reason they're doing that is because that's what the law requires, that you get 3 hours in these particular subject matter. But they're talented folks. The CE providers are talented folks. They'll mix it up and match it where it's enjoyable for you. So.
I agree. I mean, the courses I've gone to the last couple of years with the board being in limbo was all about rules and how we operate and what we do. And so this will be a nice shift now that we've got our bill in place to move forward.
Yeah, nobody cares what we do unless they're in trouble. Then they want to know everything there is about it. So. Any further discussion on 365.15? If not, is there a motion to propose these rules?
I'll motion Ben to propose the rules.
I'll second it.
Motion from Ben and a second from Robbie. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Ellen, what's next?
I believe we're on agenda item 17 concerning Rule 365.19.
That's correct.
Okay, great. So these proposed rule amendments incorporate legislative changes again, specifically sections 18 through 21 of House Bill 636. Other changes contained within the rule reflect the board's consideration and implementation of the Sunset Commission's recommendations to take a more hands-off approach to continuing education, to allow those providers more flexibility to be creative. And some of the things that have been done away with are limits on class size. The prescribed format of the class is either a 1-day 6-hour course or 2-day 3-hour courses within a week's time. Now classes can be within 1 to 6 hours in length. And so that'll better serve our licensees as they can choose what's best for them, whether they want to sit in a course all day and get it over with, or if they prefer to take particular classes, try out a variety of instructors. This will provide them with more flexibility. This rule amendment also proposes renaming the rule to course providers to better describe the contents as they apply to both continuing education courses and training programs. In the past, the agency has generally lumped continuing education and training for registrants, the drain cleaners, drain cleaner restricted, and residential utilities installers together. However, in statute, it's clear that the legislature intends for these to be separate. And so we're hoping that these training programs are more designed for someone who's at the registrant level as opposed to the licensee level, and that those can be better geared towards the population that's in the course and help support them as they move their way through the plumbing profession. So these are just changes that we're making with these rules. If anybody has any specific questions about this rule, I'm happy to answer that now. And I would say if anybody listening to us has comments after they get a chance to read through these on the register, please do send in those comments via the rule comments at TSBPE website email address that's listed, and so we can take those into account. You have the opportunity to provide feedback, not just before, as Chairman Denton mentioned, but going forward during this rulemaking process. So we would be curious and want to hear from you.
And those comments will be passed on to you as a board member so that we can take those in consideration before final adoption. And no doubt, the last time we posted these informally on our website, we got lots of interesting and informative and good feedback. And as a result, a lot of changes were made as a result of those comments. And I'll also say this, as we go forward with these rules, these are a work in progress. Let's say we do propose them, we finally adopt them, and we get it 6 months into it and this doesn't seem to be working. Simple matter, just pick it up and let's revise them and modify them as we go. So they're going to be a work in progress. This is not a one-time shot, speak now or forever hold your peace. As this, it's new and it's different, and we're going to see some areas we missed. The one thing we're not going to do is continue the practice of micromanaging the providers in the educational material that they provide. I believe it. I agree with the Sunset Commission. I think it was over regulation of these providers. They're talented folks and they can put together great programs. In the bottom line, and I'm hoping this is going to be the case and we'll be watching for it. This not only is going to be more enjoyable for the plumber, it's going to be more convenient for the plumber because they can do it virtually. Eventually, I'm hoping it's going to be less expensive to the plumber, because this gives the providers some opportunities to cut their own cost or increase their volumes. And I hope that's going to be reflected in a lower per hour cost to the plumbers. The aspect that allows virtual CEs has been in place some time. Robbie talked about it. I would venture a guess that has saved hundreds of thousands of dollars to the plumbing industry or the plumbers themselves. It has allowed them not to have to travel, get a hotel room, but allowed them to stay home. So I think it's made, even though we can't measure it, I think it has made a huge impact on the plumbing industry. I don't even know if they realize it, but I wish I had it. Lisa, when we get an actuarial department, I'll let them figure out how much that saved us or saved the industry by making those changes. So I'm sorry to get sidetracked, but any other questions or comments on 365.19 course providers? If not, is there a motion to propose these rules?
So moved.
Motion by Robbie.
Second, Ron Ainsworth.
Second by Ron Ainsworth. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, next we have agenda item 18 concerning Rule 365.20. The proposed amendments to this rule also incorporate legislative changes, specifically sections 19 and 20 of House Bill 636, which require the board to establish minimum qualifications for instructors of continuing education courses and training programs. These sections also call for the executive director to improve the instructors who meet those minimum qualifications. This rule amendment also proposes renaming the rule to Instructor Minimum Qualifications, Standards, and Responsibilities to better describe the rule's contents. It's currently called Course Instructors for Continuing Professional Education Programs. But again, we're trying to drive home the point that there are continuing education courses as well as training programs for registrants as opposed to licensees and registrants being lumped together. If anyone has any specific questions about this rule, I'd be happy to answer those.
Board, any questions?
So we're not voting on approving instructor strategies.
Would you repeat that? Is your mic on?
So this rule gives Lisa the full authority to approve instructors as opposed to the board having to vote on them, correct?
Yes, so this will be beneficial to the agency in a number of ways. The statute does provide for the executive director to approve them according to the criteria that the board again is setting with this rule. And the feedback we received informally indicated that people still wanted the providers to be licensees. I believe there's language that allows them to incorporate material from manufacturers to your earlier concern. And so it's kind of, we're taking the best of both. And I think that's similar to the practice now where a licensee is a course instructor, but they do have providers come in. So Lisa will approve them. It'll be on a rolling basis, which will also be nice. People who come in later, there's no hard or fast deadlines. If someone decides they want to get into the business, they don't have to wait a year to start that application process.
I love it. I mean, this is great.
If these manufacturers were, am I on?
Yeah, the space bar isn't working. To allow a manufacturer to come in, if provider X said, hey, we're having manufacturer come in, is he an instructor or is it still, when I read through here and it says, you know, an instructor must have this license, must have this, must have that. For a instructor of this new widget manufacturer, where does he fall into this?
The manufacturer.
I don't know that he has a specific title. I think going back to the curriculum rule, what we've kind of imagined is that they submit the material they plan on using. And so whether that's a video presentation, and I think the curriculum also calls for students to be engaged. and kind of a way to test their comprehension of the materials that's going on. That's something we built into the curriculum standards. So I don't know that they necessarily have to be defined, but we would want to see, given the legislature's given us the explicit authority to focus on curriculum, we'd want to see whatever materials, whether it's video, whether it's handouts, what they intend to present ahead of time. And, you know, I think it says something about we weren't going to count gratuitous advertising. So maybe they have an hour and 15-minute proposal. If 15 minutes is kind of like, oh, our products are the best or whatnot, they could still show that, but they wouldn't necessarily get credit for that. And so I'm not sure that the licensees and registrants sitting through those courses would necessarily want to be there for that extraneous advertising either. So as long as it's educational and informative, we would count, whether it's from a manufacturer or whomever the course instructor wants to include. And
You know,
sorry,
the beauty part of what we're doing here is you know who's going to decide whether it's a meaningful, informative benefit to the plumber? Not this agency, but the plumber. And again, they're going to vote with their checkbook. If you go to a program and it's nothing but a sales pitch and you don't feel you got anything out of it, well, guess what? You'll never be back. So this puts the power in the hands of the plumbers for them to choose who's providing the most innovative and educational material to go back to year after year after year. And it stops the agency from deciding what's good, and it lets the plumbers decide what's good. And I think that's a fundamental shift that's going to help the successful providers as well as the plumbers. So, any other questions on 36520?
Can I add something to his question? If you
Please.
can hear me now, I hope.
I can.
Yay.
Meeting's almost over, so it's about time.
I know I deserved that. I was going to say there's a definite distinction between materials that are provided and an instructor and a provider. So an instructor of material or an instructor can't be an instructor unless they're working under a provider, and the material they're going to be submitting, the provider's going to be submitting all of that material. And it might be a manufacturer that submits it and says, hey, I just want to offer X, Y, and Z. Kind of to go along with your thoughts there.
Yeah.
Question.
I do think, and I appreciate that, because I can see in the, provider brings in a water heater manufacturer and he's going to do, hey, we got tankless, we got heat pump, and we got solar water heaters. And he could do a very generic, non-infomercial kind of presentation underneath that provider. And he would do all the talking. And that would be, I think, a very informative class. That would be very interesting. So I think opening that up is just huge.
It's opening up for some creativity too. And I think you're going to come up, some people are going to be very creative and come up with some things that we're going to be impressed with, and I'm sure the plumbers will be too.
Can I get a clarification? So you put the distinction of a provider, instructor, or material. Okay, I think that was good. That, say it is a water heater manufacturer, he does have to come in through the provider.
Correct.
He can't just show up for your place and say, here's an hour of continuing education. Okay.
Right, and that's based on feedback we did receive from our licensees when we did send out those questionnaires a few months ago. And so it was clear that the majority of our responses that came in wanted them to continue to be a licensee. I think we want to allow manufacturers courses or information to the extent that it does allow innovative or newer products to be addressed, innovations in the plumbing industry. at the same time, we don't want to create, different levels and tiers and make somebody an instructor who doesn't necessarily need to be an instructor, who can just kind of piggyback off of the course instructors who are licensees. And those licensees, say the manufacturer's representative got something slightly wrong, or they wanted to make a slight clarification, there would be somebody with the understanding that comes with being a licensee there to do that. So I think taking all of that into consideration, this is the version we're proposing. Again, if we get comments back, we'll definitely take those into consideration.
Comments or questions from any other board? Is there a motion to adopt for proposal 36520?
So moved. Ron Ainsworth.
Second? Second, Mr. Janos. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. 36524.
All right, this is the last one. This is a new rule that we're proposing here. The board has the authority to exempt certain persons from continuing education and training requirements if the board determines that that is in the public interest. Chapter 55 of the Texas Occupations Code provides for a 2-year continuing education extension for military service members. However, as you guys know, as the chairman has made a specific concerted effort to keep as many licensees as we can, that licensees who have been expired for more than 2 years are non-renewable. So you have this extension butting up against this really hard deadline in which the license is no longer renewable. So if a military service member takes a 2-year extension, as they're entitled to under Chapter 55, their reliance on that could unintentionally backfire on them if they wait, if they take the full 2 years and then find out they need to take 6 to 18 hours of continuing education, assuming they've let it go expired for more than 1 year. And so that would be very difficult to complete by the deadline. So rather than exempting military service members on active duty, or rather than giving them an extension, we'd like to just exempt them from the continuing education requirements, provided they can prove they were on active duty service. And we think that this would be more aligned with the public interest in increasing our number of plumbers in the industry, as well as assisting those military service members who are transitioning back to civilian life. Additionally, board employees who review continuing education materials, who monitor those continuing education courses, and our course instructors who teach continuing education courses would continue to be exempt as they were under the rule. This is just by making it a separate rule, we hope the exemptions will be clearer for all who qualify. And if anybody has any questions about this item on the agenda, I'd be happy to answer them right now.
Questions or comments? 36524. Is there a motion to propose 36524?
Justin, I so move.
Milton, the second.
Motion by Justin, second by Milton. All those in favor say yes.
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 Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and the last item I have is a notice of rule review for Chapter 365. Since we've been doing so much in this chapter, an agency is required to do a rule review. It's called a quadrennial rule review every 4 years to see if the reason for initially adopting those rules continues to exist. So as part of that, we'll determine whether new rules are necessary, whether rules are no longer necessary and should be repealed. And just yesterday, we received notice that it was time for our rule review to take place. So this is really rather timely. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. We will be doing all 4 chapters, but since we're so involved in chapter 365 right now, I thought we'd go ahead and start with that one.
Helen, do we have any timeline on this?
There's not a specific hard deadline. Of course, we'll publish notice and then it kind of kicks back to the regular rulemaking process. So if we decide to repeal a whole host of rules, people will still have 30 days to comment on those proposed repeals before they go forward to a board vote for adoption.
Well, I'll tell you, they played right into my hand, because that was the next thing that I was going to suggest we do, is take a look at every single rule that we've done to make sure that it's still germane, that it's up to date, that it's still needed. So the legislature or whoever it is requiring exactly what my suggestion would be, that we go through the entire rule process. And I consider this is going to be a lengthy process. I don't want to put a timeline on it. We'll do it over a period of time. We'll solicit input from the industry. They're going to offer us some suggestions of something that needs to be repealed or done away with or added or modified. It's been my experience in 18 years of providing regulatory oversight to industry folks. Reputable business people don't mind to be regulated, but what they do want is for the rules to be clear and unambiguous and evenly administered across the entire industry. And as long as we do that, businesses don't mind being regulated. I never did. I was a businessman for 40 years and I complied. The problem is when your rules are ambiguous or hard to understand. And I'd like to call this rule review a plain talk rule review. If there's something that's ambiguous or not clear, let's make it clear and put it in plain English, where a plumber can pick it up and read it and say, I know what that means. So Helen, thank you for what you've done on this, as well as all these. We're certainly not through. And I'm a little disappointed we didn't get any further than we got, because there's a lot more to do that we've already discussed. But I'm hopeful that we will complete this process in September. We'll get some feedback on the ones that we post today. So we'll have another busy agenda. And I know it's somewhat kind of dry. I know it's difficult to get through it, but it's the most, in my mind, some of the most important things that really affect plumbers and really affect providers. So it's important that we spend some time on it. So Helen, what else?
I think that's it. If you want to go ahead and make a motion to publish.
Did we not make one on 365?
Yes. And this will give people the opportunity to comment again if they have any, burning rule suggestions they want to make to us. It'll list the rule comments at tsbpe.texas.gov email, and they can go ahead and jot down their ideas there.
Okay. Is there a motion to propose chapter 365 for review?
So moved. Mark.
Motion by Mark. Is there a second?
Second, Ron Ainsworth.
Second by Ron Ainsworth. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you again, Helen. Nice job. Does that, somebody help me here, does that take us back to our discussion item? Item number 8, board discussion of strategies for increasing the number of licensed plumber. Is that where we are, board? I believe that we've covered, other than public comment.
Mr. Chairman, did we cover agenda item 21, future amendments to chapter 363?
Yeah, I saw that on the agenda. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. What is that?
No.
Tab 20.
And you and Lisa spoke about that yesterday. I don't know that there's anything specific.
Lisa, maybe then if you spoke to me about it, I don't remember what we talked about. Is this something we're gonna post again for comment?
I think it was just supposed to be an open discussion of that chapter, but
We've talked about it a couple of times, and if anyone had any just guidance on training, Robbie and I have a whole list of items, and once we get over this hump of CE, which we're kind of there, we wanted to go ahead and start preparing the amendments to the training sections. So we put it on here in case anybody had something they wanted to bring up or provide direction on, such as the content of the number of hours and that sort of thing. And that's all listed in 363. Let me turn over to the first one is in 363.5 under journeyman and then master, and it breaks down the training classes. And this is also where we wanted to maybe make a few changes on the OSHA and different things like that.
This is a subject that this is a subject that, Robbie, you did the kind of a town hall meeting, is that correct? A couple of years ago before we got here.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I think it worked pretty good, and you and I talked about it at one point, and it may be that we take as many of these suggestions that we've gathered and put it into some format, and maybe we put it back out there as a rough draft of the draft.
Like posted on the website or something like that. Go for it. That's exactly what needs to happen, because who we need is feedback from the trainers as well as the board. That's who's going to give us our best ideas. So do that. Take all those ideas that y'all have talked about, and you did, post them out there on the website and invite feedback on them and see what you get. And then we'll reduce them to a form of proposed rules. Hopefully, if you can get that done, we'll do it by September. We got a big September meeting.
Well, we got to get through August, into the year, August.
Well, anyway, we got a big meeting in September.
Yeah. And so now we have a totally different structure and new board. And so I'm thinking that other people are going to have ideas about it too. So.
Okay. And the distinction is training versus continuing education.
Correct.
That's the point we're trying to make.
Totally different.
Okay.
Similar but different. How about that?
Okay. At this time, do any of the board members have any comment concerning the training requirements, or is everyone okay of doing like we did on the continuing education, posting something on our website and inviting feedback, and then reducing it to rules, proposed rules down the road?
And let me give an example just so everybody has food for thought on this, is that currently you have two 6-hour continuing education programs that are part of the 48-hour training for a journeyman. And right now they could take the same class again. They're spending money for 2 CEs of the same CE just to get the credit. And during the storm, both of the storms, one of our requests was to waive one of those CEs. But what we might do is consider something different in lieu of that other 6 hours of CE to end up with the 48 hours. That's the kind of situation that we're in, that we want to make some changes to. Yeah. And then there's portions of the continuing education that could definitely be used towards training, and vice versa is what we're hoping. So if an individual is taking part of their training and maybe they're not quite ready to take their exam, but then they've taken between 3 and 6 hours or whatever, of that year, they could renew if they have an endorsement that requires 6 hours of continuing education. In other words, make it more versatile, and the content and the use of it. Because we can see, we have every bit of the training and or continuing education that somebody has now is on the website, and we could just track it so easily. So anyway, there's a lot of things that we came up with that we think we can do beyond what some of Robbie and I talked about. So,
Well, let's do that. Let's put it on the website, get some feedback, and with the purpose of moving toward making some proposals to post for eventual formal adoption. So,
and the med gas, of course, we've got a big change there. So
It's a big chapter, so it's gonna, you know, it needs to
it's a
be,
big job.
we need to look through each line item, and putting it out for public comment would be great, because then we'd have additional information that we probably received 2 years ago, but it'll be current for now.
yes, sir.
It's 20 minutes till 2. Is it all right with the board if we take a 10-minute break before we take up the discussion items of how to add additional plumbers to the industry? Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
It's 20 minutes till 2. We'll reconvene at 10 till 2. So we're in